The morning fog hung thick over Windsor Castle as Senior Royal Guard Thomas Henderson began his routine patrol through the East Wing corridors. After 15 years of faithful service to the Crown, Thomas had developed an instinct for spotting irregularities in the palace's daily rhythm. Today, something felt different. The Queen's private chambers had been unusually busy over the past week. Staff members he didn't recognize were coming and going at odd hours, carrying sealed boxes and wrapped packages. Thomas had noticed Camilla, the Queen consort, personally supervising these activities with an intensity that seemed out of character for routine palace maintenance. As Thomas rounded the corner near the Royal Collection storage rooms, he spotted two unfamiliar men in maintenance uniforms, wheeling a large cart toward the service elevator. The cart was covered with a heavy tarpaulin, and the men moved with suspicious haste. Their uniforms looked authentic, but Thomas had memorized the faces of every legitimate maintenance worker in the castle. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Thomas called out, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. "I don't believe we've been introduced. Could I see your work orders?" The men exchanged nervous glances. The taller one, with graying hair and weathered hands, fumbled in his pocket. "Of course, sir. We're here for the routine cleaning of the storage areas." Lady Camilla arranged everything personally. Thomas examined the paperwork with trained eyes. The work order appeared legitimate at first glance, bearing official seals and signatures. However, something nagged at him. The timing was wrong. Major cleaning operations in the Royal Collection rooms required advanced security clearance, which Thomas would have been briefed about during the morning security meeting. "I'll need to verify this with the head of security," Thomas said politely but firmly. "Standard protocol, you understand." The men's anxiety became more apparent. The shorter one, a stocky man with nervous eyes, kept glancing toward the service elevator, as if calculating escape routes. "Sir, we're already running behind schedule." Lady Camilla was very specific about timing. Perhaps you could call her directly? Thomas's suspicions deepened. In his experience, legitimate palace staff never suggested bypassing security protocols, regardless of who had authorized their work. He keyed his radio to call for backup while maintaining a casual demeanor. "No problem at all," Thomas replied. "Let's all go together to speak with Lady Camilla. I'm sure she'll be happy to clarify the situation." The reaction was immediate and telling. The taller man's face went pale, and he began backing away from the cart. "Actually, sir, we might have mixed up our schedules. Perhaps we should return tomorrow when the paperwork is more clearly sorted out." Thomas stepped closer to the cart, his training kicking in. The shape of the objects beneath the tarpaulin didn't match cleaning supplies. They appeared to be rectangular boxes of various sizes, carefully secured with rope and padding. "Before you go, I'd like to take a quick look at your equipment. Quality assurance, you know." The tension in the corridor became palpable. Thomas could hear footsteps approaching from both directions as his backup arrived. The two men realized their situation was deteriorating rapidly. They abandoned the cart and attempted to flee toward the service elevator, but Thomas was ready for this possibility. "Stop right there," Thomas commanded, blocking their path. "Palace security, you're not going anywhere until we sort this out properly." As his fellow guards surrounded the suspicious individuals, Thomas carefully lifted the edge of the tarpaulin. What he saw underneath made his blood run cold. Ornate jewelry boxes, antique silverware, and what appeared to be historical artifacts from the Royal Collection were packed carefully in the cart. These weren't cleaning supplies. This was a carefully planned theft operation. The implications hit Thomas immediately. These items didn't just represent monetary value. They were irreplaceable pieces of British history. Some of the jewelry boxes bore the distinctive markings of pieces that had belonged to previous monarchs. The silver pieces appeared to be from ceremonial sets used in state functions for generations. Thomas's mind raced as he processed the situation. How had unauthorized individuals gained access to such precious items? Who had provided them with authentic-looking paperwork? Most troubling of all, why had Lady Camilla's name been invoked in connection with this operation? The arrested men remained silent when questioned, refusing to explain how they had obtained access to the Royal Collection or who had hired them. Their professional quality, fake credentials suggested this wasn't a simple, opportunistic crime, but rather a sophisticated operation with inside knowledge of palace procedures. As Thomas secured the scene and cataloged the recovered items, he couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was just the beginning of something much larger. The involvement of Lady Camilla's name, whether legitimate or fabricated, would require the most delicate investigation. The reputation of the royal family and the security of the crown's most precious possessions hung in the balance. The fog outside Windsor Castle was beginning to lift, but inside the palace walls a much more complex mystery was just beginning to unfold. Thomas Henderson, who had started his day expecting routine patrol duties, now found himself at the center of what could become the most significant security breach in recent royal history. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell arrived at Windsor Castle within an hour of Thomas Henderson's urgent call to Scotland Yard. As one of the Met's most experienced investigators in high-profile theft cases, Sarah had handled sensitive situations involving wealthy families and cultural institutions, but never anything involving the royal family directly. The atmosphere in the castle was tense as Sarah met with head of palace security, Colonel James Wright. The recovered items had been secured in a temporary evidence room, and the two arrested men were being held in the palace's security office, pending transfer to a London holding facility. "This is extremely delicate," Colonel Wright explained as he led Sarah through the corridors. "The items in question are not just valuable antiques. Some of these pieces have been in the royal collection for centuries. Their theft would represent not just a financial loss but a cultural catastrophe." Sarah examined the recovered items carefully. Among them were a diamond brooch that had belonged to Queen Victoria, a set of Georgian silver serving pieces used during state dinners, and several ornate jewelry boxes containing what appeared to be personal effects from various royal residences. The professional packing suggested whoever planned this operation understood the value and fragility of these historical artifacts. "The most concerning aspect," Colonel Wright continued, "is how these individuals gained access to the royal collection storage areas. These rooms require specific security clearances and are monitored by multiple systems. Someone with intimate knowledge of our procedures had to be involved." Sarah's attention focused on the forged documentation the men had presented to Thomas Henderson. The paperwork was sophisticated, featuring accurate security codes and convincing replicas of official seals. Creating such documents would require access to templates and insider information about palace administrative procedures. During her interrogation of the arrested men, Sarah encountered complete silence. Both individuals refused to speak without lawyers present and showed no signs of cooperating with the investigation. Their fingerprints revealed previous convictions for high-end theft operations, suggesting they were experienced criminals hired specifically for this job. The breakthrough came when Sarah examined the men's personal effects more carefully. Hidden in the lining of one man's jacket was a small piece of paper with a partial address and a series of numbers that appeared to be a shipping manifest reference. The address was incomplete, but it pointed to a warehouse district in East London known for its import-export businesses. Meanwhile, Thomas Henderson was reviewing security footage from the past week, looking for patterns in the unusual activity he had observed. The recordings revealed something troubling. Lady Camilla had indeed been present during several late evening visits to the royal collection storage areas, accompanied by staff members who appeared to be cataloging and organizing various items. "Look at this," Thomas pointed out to Sarah as they watched the footage together. "These aren't random visits. She's specifically directing them to certain cabinets and storage units. There's a pattern here." Sarah studied Lady Camilla's behavior in the recordings. Her movement seemed purposeful and organized, as if she was working from a specific list or inventory. More concerning was the presence of several individuals who didn't appear in any palace staff records, yet they moved through the secure areas with apparent authorization. The investigation took a more serious turn when the palace's head curator, Dr. Elizabeth Thornton, completed her preliminary inventory of the affected storage areas. Her findings were alarming. The attempted theft represented only a fraction of the items that had been removed from their proper locations over the past several weeks were missing significantly more than what was recovered in that cart, Dr. Thornton reported grimly. "Based on my initial assessment, dozens of valuable pieces appear to have been relocated or removed entirely. This wasn't a single theft attempt. It looks like a systematic removal operation that's been ongoing for some time." Sarah realized they were dealing with something far more complex than a simple burglary. The evidence suggested a carefully planned operation involving multiple shipments and possibly international buyers. The professional nature of the operation and the inside knowledge required pointed to a sophisticated criminal network with connections to the highest levels of the palace. Hierarchy. The most troubling question remained unanswered. What was Lady Camilla's actual role in these events? The security footage showed her clear involvement in organizing access to the stolen items, but her motivations and the extent of her participation remained unclear. Was she a victim of manipulation by skilled criminals, or was she actively participating in the theft of crown treasures? As Sarah prepared to expand the investigation beyond the palace walls, she knew that every step forward would need to be handled with extreme discretion. The potential involvement of a senior member of the royal family created unprecedented challenges for both the investigation and the monarchy itself. The warehouse address found in the suspect's jacket became Sarah's next priority. If her suspicions were correct, that location might hold the key to understanding the full scope of this operation and recovering the missing pieces of Britain's cultural heritage before they disappeared into private collections around the world. Thomas Henderson volunteered to accompany Sarah to the warehouse, his intimate knowledge of the stolen items making him valuable for identification purposes. As they prepared to leave Windsor Castle, both investigators understood they were about to uncover truths that could shake the foundations of the British monarchy. The warehouse district in East London presented a stark contrast to the grandeur of Windsor Castle. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell and Royal Guard Thomas Henderson approached the address they had pieced together from the suspect's hidden note, accompanied by a full tactical support team. The building in question was a nondescript industrial facility that blended seamlessly with the dozens of similar structures in the area. Sarah had obtained a search warrant based on the evidence recovered from the arrested thieves, but she knew they needed to move quickly. If this was indeed part of an international smuggling operation, any delay could result in the permanent loss of irreplaceable royal artifacts. The warehouse appeared abandoned from the outside, with no visible activity or signage indicating its current use. However, Thomas noticed fresh tire tracks in the muddy courtyard and recent disturbances in the dust around the loading dock. Someone had been using this facility recently despite its neglected appearance. There, Thomas pointed to a side entrance where the lock appeared newer than the weathered door it secured. That's not original hardware. Someone's been maintaining access to this building. The tactical team breached the entrance efficiently, and what they discovered inside exceeded their worst expectations. The warehouse had been converted into a sophisticated packaging and shipping operation specifically designed for handling valuable antiques and artwork. Professional-grade storage containers, climate control equipment, and specialized padding materials filled the space. More shocking was the inventory they found. Dozens of items from the royal collection were carefully stored throughout the warehouse, each piece professionally cataloged and prepared for shipment. Sarah recognized several pieces from Dr. Thornton's missing items list, including a ceremonial sword that had belonged to King George III and a collection of rare manuscripts from the royal library. Thomas moved through the warehouse with growing horror as he identified piece after piece of stolen royal treasures. "This represents centuries of British history," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Some of these items haven't been seen outside the palace walls in decades. How did they manage to remove so much without triggering our security systems?" The answer came when Sarah discovered a sophisticated office area hidden behind false walls at the back of the warehouse. The space contained detailed floor plans of Windsor Castle, including security camera positions, guard patrol schedules, and access codes for various restricted areas. Most damning were the shipping manifests that revealed the true scope of the operation. According to the documents, shipments had been leaving the warehouse regularly for the past 3 months, destined for private collectors in Switzerland, Monaco, and several Middle Eastern countries. The buyers were identified only by code numbers, but the prices listed were staggering. Millions of pounds for individual pieces that represented priceless cultural heritage. Sarah's investigation team discovered communication records that painted a clearer picture of the operations organization. Encrypted emails detailed pickup schedules, discussed modifications to palace security routines, and provided updates on which items would be available for acquisition during specific time windows. The most explosive discovery came when Sarah found a secure laptop hidden behind a false panel. The device contained video calls between the warehouse operators and their clients, including one conversation that clearly showed Lady Camilla in the background of what appeared to be a private royal residence. Thomas studied the video evidence with disbelief. That's definitely Lady Camilla, but I don't understand what she's doing in these communications. Is she aware she's being recorded? Is she a willing participant or somehow being manipulated? The shipping manifests revealed that the next major shipment was scheduled for that very evening. A cargo vessel registered in Panama was set to depart from a private dock on the Thames, carrying what the manifest described as historical reproductions and decorative items, but which Sarah now knew were authentic royal treasures worth tens of millions of pounds. Sarah immediately coordinated with Thames River Police and Customs authorities to intercept the vessel before it could leave British waters. The ship's cargo hold contained over 50 pieces from the royal collection, professionally packed and ready for delivery to buyers who believed they were purchasing legally acquired antiques. The captain of the vessel, a career smuggler named Victor Petrov, proved more cooperative than the warehouse thieves when faced with overwhelming evidence. He revealed that the operation had been running for over a year, with Lady Camilla allegedly serving as the inside source who provided access to the royal collection and advance warning about security changes. She seemed to know exactly which pieces would not be missed immediately. Petrov explained during his interrogation. The operation was supposed to be gradual, taking only items that were rarely displayed or examined. But recently she became more aggressive, wanting to move larger quantities faster. Thomas struggled to process these revelations. Throughout his years of service, he had observed Lady Camilla during countless official functions and private moments. While she had sometimes seemed distant or preoccupied, he had never suspected she could be involved in systematic theft of crown property. Sarah's analysis of the financial records revealed another disturbing pattern. Bank accounts linked to the operation had received significant deposits corresponding to the shipping dates of various royal artifacts. The money appeared to be flowing to accounts in offshore jurisdictions known for their banking secrecy laws. As the investigation team secured the warehouse and cataloged the recovered items, Sarah realized they had uncovered only part of the criminal network. The sophistication of the operation, the international scope of the buyers, and the level of access required suggested involvement by additional conspirators within the palace hierarchy. The evidence against Lady Camilla was substantial, but still circumstantial. While her presence in the communications and her access to the stolen items were undeniable, proving her active participation in the criminal conspiracy would require additional investigation. Sarah knew that arresting a senior member of the royal family would require absolute certainty and irrefutable evidence. The recovered artifacts represented a significant victory, but Sarah understood that the most difficult phase of the investigation was just beginning. Confronting Lady Camilla and unraveling the full extent of her involvement would require delicate coordination with the highest levels of government and the royal family itself. The decision to confront Lady Camilla required approval from the highest levels of government. Prime Minister's office, the Attorney General, and senior palace officials held emergency meetings throughout the night as Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell prepared her case. The evidence was substantial, but the constitutional implications of charging a senior royal with theft were unprecedented in modern British history. Sarah returned to Windsor Castle the following morning with a carefully planned approach. She would need to interview Lady Camilla while respecting royal protocol and ensuring that any statements obtained could be used in court if necessary. Thomas Henderson had been chosen to accompany her, both for his intimate knowledge of palace security and because his presence might help maintain the appearance of routine palace business. Lady Camilla was found in her private study, reviewing correspondence when Colonel Wright announced that investigators needed to speak with her regarding the security incident from the previous day. Her reaction was telling. A brief moment of panic flashed across her face before she composed herself and agreed to the meeting. "Of course," Lady Camilla said, her voice steady but with an underlying tension. "I assume this is about those dreadful men who tried to steal from the royal collection. How terrible that such people could gain access to the palace." Sarah began with routine questions about Lady Camilla's recent activities in the royal collection storage areas. The security footage had clearly shown her presence during multiple evening visits, but Sarah wanted to hear her explanation before revealing the full extent of their evidence. I've been working on a personal project, Lady Camilla explained carefully, cataloging some of the lesser-known pieces in the collection for a potential exhibition. Many of these beautiful items haven't been properly documented in years, and I thought it would be wonderful to share them with the public. Thomas listened carefully to her explanation, comparing it with what he had observed during his patrols. Lady Camilla's story was plausible, but the timing and secrecy of her activities still seemed suspicious given the sophisticated theft operation they had uncovered. Sarah then showed Lady Camilla photographs of some of the recovered items from the warehouse. We found these pieces in a storage facility in East London, apparently prepared for shipment to international buyers. Do you recognize any of these items from your cataloging work? Lady Camilla's composure began to crack as she examined the photographs. Her hands trembled slightly as she recognized pieces she had personally handled during her evening visits to the storage areas. These are definitely from the royal collection. How did they end up in a warehouse? This is absolutely shocking. The conversation took a more serious turn when Sarah presented the shipping manifests and communication records that connected the warehouse operation to palace activities. Lady Camilla's name appeared repeatedly in the documentation, and her intimate knowledge of the collection's contents was evident in the thieves' selection of specific valuable pieces. Lady Camilla, Sarah said gently but firmly, we have substantial evidence suggesting that information about the royal collection's contents and security procedures was provided to the criminals we arrested. This information could only have come from someone with your level of access and knowledge. The weight of the accusation hung heavily in the elegant study. Lady Camilla sat in silence for several minutes, her mind apparently racing through possible responses. Thomas observed her carefully, noting the signs of extreme stress and internal conflict that seemed to be tearing at her composed exterior. I never intended for it to go this far, Lady Camilla finally whispered, her voice barely audible. It started as something entirely different, and then it became impossible to stop. Sarah leaned forward, recognizing that Lady Camilla was preparing to make crucial admissions. Please tell us exactly what happened. We want to understand the full situation. The story that emerged was complex and tragic. Lady Camilla revealed that she had initially been approached by art dealers who claimed to represent private museums interested in purchasing replicas of royal artifacts. They had convinced her that creating detailed catalogs and allowing expert examination of the pieces would help preserve British cultural heritage in institutions around the world. They seemed so legitimate, Lady Camilla explained, tears beginning to flow. They had credentials from respected institutions and spoke knowledgeably about art history and conservation. I thought I was contributing to scholarship and cultural preservation. The deception had been sophisticated and gradual. The criminals had slowly increased their requests for access, eventually convincing Lady Camilla that temporary removal of pieces for detailed study and reproduction was standard practice among major museums. By the time she realized the true nature of their activities, they had compromising evidence of her involvement and threatened to destroy her reputation if she didn't continue cooperating. Thomas felt a mixture of sympathy and disappointment as he listened to Lady Camilla's confession. Her motivations appeared to stem from genuine interest in sharing British cultural treasures with the world, but her naive trust in criminal manipulators had put irreplaceable historical artifacts at risk. They told me the pieces would be returned after the reproductions were completed, Lady Camilla continued. But then they began demanding access to more valuable items and became threatening when I tried to limit their requests. I was terrified of the scandal that would result if my involvement became public. Sarah recognized the pattern of a sophisticated confidence, operation designed specifically to exploit Lady Camilla's position and interests. The criminals had clearly researched her background and personality before approaching her with their seemingly legitimate proposal. The psychological pressure Lady Camilla had been under became apparent as she described months of sleepless nights and constant anxiety about the situation spiraling beyond her control. She had wanted to confess to palace security, but feared the consequences for both herself and the monarchy's reputation. I know I've made terrible mistakes, Lady Camilla said, looking directly at Thomas. I've betrayed the trust placed in me and put precious pieces of British history at risk. There's no excuse for my actions, regardless of how they began. Sarah concluded the interview with a clear understanding of Lady Camilla's role in the theft operation. While she had been manipulated and deceived, her actions had still facilitated the theft of crown property worth millions of pounds. The legal and constitutional implications of prosecuting her would need to be carefully considered by authorities far above Sarah's level. As they prepared to leave Lady Camilla's study, Thomas reflected on how a single poor decision had led to such devastating consequences. The trusted guardian of British cultural treasures had become, however unwillingly, the key to their near loss forever. Following Lady Camilla's confession, Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell launched an international investigation to dismantle the criminal network that had exploited her trust and nearly succeeded in stealing millions of pounds worth of royal treasures. The scope of the operation became clear as authorities in multiple countries began coordinating their efforts to track down the masterminds behind the sophisticated scheme. The leader of the criminal organization was identified as Marcus Rothwell, a charismatic art dealer with an impeccable reputation who had operated legitimate galleries in London, Geneva, and New York for over 2 decades. His respectable public persona had provided perfect cover for his illegal activities, allowing him to approach high-profile targets like Lady Camilla without arousing suspicion. Sarah's investigation revealed that Rothwell had been planning the royal collection theft for over 3 years, carefully researching the palace's security procedures and identifying potential inside sources. His team had created elaborate fake credentials and established shell companies to support their cover story of legitimate academic and museum interest in the royal artifacts. Thomas Henderson assisted in tracking down other palace staff, members who had unknowingly provided assistance to the criminals. Several employees in the Royal Collection Department had been approached by Rothwell's team with seemingly innocent requests for information about cataloging procedures and storage systems. None of them had realized they were providing intelligence for a theft operation. The international buyers who had purchased stolen royal artifacts presented a complex legal challenge. Many claimed they had believed the items were legitimate reproductions or legally acquired antiques. However, Sarah's investigation revealed that several wealthy collectors had specifically requested access to unique pieces from private royal collections, suggesting they understood the true nature of their purchases. Recovering the artifacts that had already been shipped overseas required delicate diplomatic negotiations. The Swiss authorities seized several pieces from a private museum in Geneva that had purchased them believing they were legal acquisitions. Similar recoveries were made in Monaco and Dubai, where wealthy collectors had displayed stolen royal treasures in their private residences. The financial investigation uncovered a web of offshore accounts and shell companies that Rothwell had used to launder the proceeds from his theft operation. Over £15 million had been generated from the sale of royal artifacts, with the money flowing through banks in the Cayman Islands, Panama, and Switzerland before reaching accounts controlled by the criminal organization. Lady Camilla's cooperation with the investigation proved crucial in understanding how the criminals had maintained their deception for so long. She provided detailed information about her interactions with Rothwell's team, including recorded conversations and documentation. They had shown her to support their claims of legitimacy. They were extraordinarily sophisticated, Lady Camilla explained during one of her debriefing sessions with Sarah. They knew details about museum acquisition, procedures that even impressed the royal collection curators. Everything they showed me appeared authentic and professional. The investigation revealed that Rothwell had previously operated similar schemes targeting private collectors and smaller museums across Europe. His method involved identifying individuals with access to valuable artifacts, then gradually building trust through seemingly legitimate cultural and academic projects before revealing his true criminal intentions. Thomas Henderson's role in the investigation expanded as he helped identify security vulnerabilities that had allowed the operation to succeed. His recommendations for improved procedures included enhanced background checks for all personnel requesting access to the royal collection and mandatory reporting of any unusual interest in the collection's contents. The arrest of Marcus Rothwell in his London gallery created international headlines as the full scope of his criminal activities became public. Police discovered that his gallery had been used as a front for laundering stolen artwork from multiple sources. with the royal collection theft representing only his most ambitious operation. Rothwell's international network included accomplices in major art markets around the world, from New York auction houses to private dealers in Hong Kong. The investigation revealed a sophisticated criminal infrastructure that had been operating for over a decade, stealing and trafficking cultural artifacts from museums, private collections, and historical sites across multiple continents. The psychological evaluation of Lady Camilla revealed the extent to which she had been manipulated by Rothwell's team. Expert psychologists confirmed that she had been subjected to a carefully planned influence campaign designed to exploit her genuine interest in cultural preservation and her position within the royal family. She was the perfect target for this type of operation, explained Dr. Patricia Williamson, a specialist in criminal psychology who consulted on the case. Her access, her interests, and her desire to contribute to cultural scholarship made her vulnerable to sophisticated manipulation by individuals who understood exactly how to exploit those characteristics. The recovery efforts continued for months as investigators tracked down artifacts that had been scattered across the globe. Some pieces were recovered from legitimate buyers who had unknowingly purchased stolen goods, while others were found in the private collections of individuals who had clearly been aware of their illegal origins. The international cooperation required for the investigation demonstrated the global nature of art theft and cultural crime. Interpol coordinated efforts across multiple jurisdictions, while diplomatic channels were used to negotiate the return of artifacts that had entered countries with strict antiquities laws. As the investigation neared its conclusion, Sarah reflected on the complexity of the case that had begun with Thomas Henderson's alert observation during a routine palace patrol. The theft operation had been prevented from achieving its full objectives, but the damage to the royal family's reputation and Lady Camilla's personal situation remained to be addressed. The final phase of the investigation focused on ensuring that all stolen artifacts were properly authenticated and returned to their rightful place in the royal collection, while preparing the comprehensive legal case that would bring Marcus Rothwell and his associates to justice for their crimes against British cultural heritage. The trial of Marcus Rothwell and his criminal associates became one of the most closely watched legal proceedings in recent British history. The case attracted international attention not only because of the involvement of the royal family, but also due to the unprecedented scale of cultural artifact theft that had been uncovered during the investigation. Rothwell faced charges of theft, conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud related to his systematic targeting of the royal collection. The prosecution, led by a team of Crown prosecutors specializing in high-value theft cases, presented overwhelming evidence of his sophisticated criminal operation that had exploited Lady Camilla's trust and position. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell testified extensively about the investigation, detailing how the criminal network had operated and the international scope of their artifact trafficking activities. Her testimony helped the jury understand the complexity of the deception that had been used to manipulate Lady Camilla into providing access to the royal collection. Thomas Henderson's crucial role in discovering the initial theft attempt earned him recognition from both the court and palace officials. His alertness and quick thinking had prevented the loss of millions of pounds worth of irreplaceable historical artifacts. The judge specifically commended his dedication to protecting Britain's cultural heritage during the sentencing phase. Lady Camilla's legal situation required careful consideration by the Crown prosecution, service and senior government officials. While her cooperation with the investigation had been essential to dismantling the criminal network, her actions had still facilitated the theft of Crown property. The unique constitutional position of the royal family created unprecedented legal challenges. After extensive deliberation, authorities decided that Lady Camilla's prosecution would not serve the public interest. Considering her manipulation by sophisticated criminals and her full cooperation with the investigation, however, she agreed to make substantial financial reparations to cover investigation costs and security improvements at royal residences. The personal consequences for Lady Camilla were severe, despite avoiding criminal charges. She voluntarily withdrew from most public royal duties and underwent extensive counseling to address the psychological manipulation she had experienced. Her relationship with other members of the royal family remained strained as they processed the betrayal of trust that had occurred. Marcus Rothwell received a sentence of 15 years in prison after being convicted on all charges. The judge noted that his crimes represented not just theft, but an attack on Britain's cultural identity and historical legacy. Several of his associates received sentences ranging from 5 to 10 years for their roles in the international trafficking operation. The recovered artifacts underwent extensive conservation and authentication processes before being returned to the royal collection. Some pieces had suffered minor damage during their time in criminal hands, requiring careful restoration by expert conservators. The total value of recovered items exceeded £25 million. International cooperation continued as authorities worked to dismantle the broader network of art thieves and illegal dealers that had been connected to Rothwell's operation. Additional arrests were made in Switzerland, Monaco, and the United States as investigators followed the money trail and recovered more stolen cultural artifacts. The security improvements implemented at Windsor Castle and other royal residences based on lessons learned from the investigation became a model for protecting cultural institutions worldwide. Thomas Henderson was promoted to senior security consultant and played a key role in designing new protocols for monitoring access to valuable collections. Dr. Elizabeth Thornton, the palace's head curator, led efforts to create a comprehensive digital catalog of the royal collection that would make future theft attempts easier to detect. The new system included detailed photographic documentation and tracking technology for the most valuable pieces. The case prompted broader discussions about the security of cultural artifacts held by museums, galleries, and private collections around the world. Professional organizations for museum security specialists studied the investigation's findings to improve their own protective measures against sophisticated criminal operations. Sarah Mitchell's work on the case earned her promotion to Detective Chief Inspector and assignment to a specialized unit focused on international art crime. Her experience with the royal collection theft made her one of Britain's leading experts in investigating cultural artifact trafficking operations. The psychological impact of the case on Lady Camilla became the subject of academic study by experts in criminal manipulation and influence operations. Her experience highlighted the vulnerability of even sophisticated individuals to carefully planned deception campaigns by skilled criminals. Recovery efforts continued for several years as investigators tracked down additional artifacts that had been stolen by Rothwell's network from other sources. The investigation had uncovered a criminal enterprise that extended far beyond the royal collection theft, leading to the recovery of stolen art and cultural objects worth over £100 million. Thomas Henderson often reflected on how his routine patrol had led to uncovering such a massive criminal operation. His vigilance had not only protected irreplaceable pieces of British history but had also exposed an international network of cultural crime that had been operating undetected for years. The final resolution of the case came when the last of the stolen royal artifacts was returned from a private collector in Japan who had unknowingly purchased pieces through Rothwell's network. The complete recovery of the royal collection items represented a rare success story in the fight against international art theft. The case became a landmark in British legal history, establishing important precedents for handling crimes involving the royal family, while demonstrating the importance of international cooperation in protecting cultural heritage. The lessons learned from Lady Camilla's manipulation by sophisticated criminals influenced training programs for individuals with access to valuable cultural artifacts worldwide. Years later, the investigation remained a testament to the dedication of law enforcement professionals like Sarah Mitchell and security personnel like Thomas Henderson, whose commitment to protecting Britain's cultural treasures had prevented an irreplaceable loss to the nation's historical legacy.